Good morning, everyone, and very much welcome to another Flash Friday. It's the last one before a little summer break, but we're still very much looking forward to discuss with you where fintech's heading. Because if we look at the news, there's not yet a summer break that hasn't started yet, and we're very much looking forward, also, of course, to have the conversation with distinguished guests like you're used to from us every Friday. And today, that's Clayton Hayward from UKheshe. Good morning, Clayton.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me today before you go on holiday.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great that you could join. I think it's really it's great to have you with us today to give your perspective on developments in fintech and payments. What we're going to talk about mostly today. Really curious to get your take on it, especially since you're based in South Africa, where I think not many people have an eye out for what's going on there. But I believe they should have, because there's a lot of interesting stuff coming from South Africa at the moment. So really cool to do that. Just some household measures for the people that are watching. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat. We're more than happy to pick them up. And otherwise, of course, please reach out to us if you want to get in touch with Clayton, for example, and further discuss business with him. Well, then let's get started. Well, Clayton, tell us a little bit about UKheshe for the people that are not so familiar with it yet.
Thanks. And yeah, so I'm the CEO of Akesh. We started the business about 3.5 years ago. We are a B2B enablement business. So if you think of the gold rush in California in the 1800s, where everybody was rushing to California to go and get gold, yeah. We see ourselves as the railway line for the guys to get there. So, being based in Africa, Africa is almost like another gold rush at the moment. We've got one of the fastest growing markets in the world. We've got the biggest unbanked populations in the world. Yep. So that's why it's this fintech Eldorado, if you want to call it, that everybody's rushing to Africa. But fintech's not that easy because of compliance, because of regulatory hurdles, because of doing business in Africa is not simple. So what we've really focused on is building an ecosystem that makes it very easy for entrance into the African market to deliver a fintech proposition. So we've built out the rails, the integration rails into the banks, the integration rails into the telcos, the integration rails into the mobile wallets, the card associations. And that's really our focus. So we really want to democratize the ability to build financial services solutions. And we've created this API first focused proposition. And that's our strength. And we're seeing a huge demand for it. And I think, as I mentioned to you previously, I think Africa is a growth bed for innovation, and what everything that happens here is because we don't have things, and we are forced to build solutions, and that allows us now to spill these solutions over into the first world markets like the North Americas, like Europe, and some of the Asian markets as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting perspective to explore, as I think not many people in Western countries are thinking at Africa, are not looking at Africa like that. So if you talk about Africa, just also to be sure, are you mostly talking about South Africa, or are you talking about most part of the continent? How far is your reach at the moment?
So at the moment, we've got partnerships and active projects across about 40 territories in Africa. So I would say must be 60-70% of the market. And, our focus is really to become a dominant player across this continent, so that if anybody's thinking fintech, their starting point is to talk to Akesh to help them build their proposition.
Yep. And so should we see it like, let's say in Europe, we talk a lot about open banking in the context of PSD2. Are you an enabler in that sense, that you're actually really trying to connect all the financial data that's available?
Definitely. So I think we're a long way off from open banking in Africa. So I think we're a good 5-10 years away from true open banking in this market. Mm-hmm. But what we're trying to do is create that ecosystem, so that, because there are a lot of incumbents in terms of the existing banks that do want to work with the fintechs, and we're providing them with that gateway in terms of the integration between the banks and the fintechs and the associations.
Okay, and so do you focus mostly on the payment side of things, or do you also see the broader financial suite as your domain at some point?
Actually, the full financial suite. So, the nature of Africa is that you have to look at the entire ecosystem. So if you're a small merchant, you need to accept payments, you need to make payments, you need to process cash, you can't just do a point solution. So it's very easy in a European context or a Western world context to build a very focused e-commerce payments business, and that's all they do. But in Africa, you need to provide a far broader proposition because the needs are far broader and the market is far more underserved. So there aren't lots of players in the market. So therefore, you have to provide a far deeper proposition.
And so how does that work? Because I think that's one of the things that I think it might be hard to understand from the European context, for example, is, on one end, you've got these underbanked people that have hardly any access to financial services. So how do you actually include them? And sometimes we think about, M-Pesa and those kind of solutions. I think like, okay, well, they have access now. Is this done? How do you see that evolve? Because I think it's good to describe that a little bit for people that are not so familiar with how the dynamics on the ground work in Africa.
Yeah, so I think the key thing is more about saying that they're underserved more than underbanked. Okay. So M-Pesa is a great example, and they've done a really good job. So where you're seeing a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth is in the focused areas of agriculture and providing loans to small farmers and giving them access to that technology, giving small merchants the ability to accept digital payments, because obviously cash is still the enemy for everybody. So we're trying to move to a cashless ecosystem across the world. Yep. And cash still dominates 80% of the global economy. So whether you're in Africa or whether you're in Southeast Asia, cash is still the enemy. So it's about taking cash out the system and providing real value. So whether it's crop insurance, whether it's a loan for seeds, whether it's a small merchant providing him a loan for his float because he's reselling airtime to people. So that those are all the opportunities, and then linking that into a regulated financial services environment. Because what's happening in Africa is initially it was very unregulated, but the central banks are starting to clamp down, and the mobile money operators need to be licensed. The wallet operators need to be licensed. You can't just go crazy anymore. So what we've done is we've partnered with the leading banks across the continent to provide sponsored bank accounts, to provide BIN sponsorships for cards, etc. So that when somebody comes into the market, and if you take it, take somebody like Wise, I think it's topical. They just listed on the stock exchange. Yep. They haven't been able to launch in South Africa for the last 5 years because of regulatory hurdles. So even though this monster company, that it's been impossible for them to launch in this market because of the regulatory hurdles. So what we try and do is help organizations like that come into these markets. And we've just done so with one of UKheshe, one of the new unicorns that was announced recently for Africa. They're now leveraging Akesh to launch the cross-border capabilities in South Africa. And also we're helping them grow their footprint across the rest of the continent. And it's really about being that plumbing for these players to say, guys, we've done it, we've done the integrations. How can we help you build out a solution? And that's how we've helped telcos with like using WhatsApp to build a full digital proposition. If you look at chat as a service, there are 200 million internet users in Africa. 172 million of them are on mobile only, of which 90% of those use WhatsApp. So that channel now becomes a very clear channel.
Yeah, indeed.
This is where we should be delivering the services. Don't force somebody to download an app, go to a website. They already understand how to use this chat channel. So why can't we originate a loan via chat? Why can't we issue a credit card via chat? Why can't we do a person-to-person payment via chat? And I think that to me is one of the huge growth opportunities, not only in Africa and in the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting development indeed. And I think it's something that probably indeed Europeans are less familiar with, as they are so much used to their traditional banking channels, which are fairly okay to use. But I think probably indeed if you like the leapfrog that you generally do in Africa when you have to come up with solutions that are nowhere near available in the market, you can definitely make a real jump forward and actually start exporting these solutions as well. So how do you see this chat environment? Because I think that's definitely interesting to explore a bit as well. how do you see that that evolving from here, right? So is it close enough to, for example, also indeed the way people use their money, mobile money wallets, for example? Does it feel similar for users? Is that why it's also getting a relatively good uptake? Or are people actually, for example, getting much more experience through chat channels like WhatsApp already?
I think the user experience in terms of chat commerce is actually far better than a lot of the traditional channels, because you can really get to the point very quickly. It's about, I want to send money to Don, and you can just, if you've got a natural language engine plugged into your chat channel, you can say, send Don $20.
Yeah.
And in the background, we send you $20 because in the background, we know who Don is because you're a contact of mine. We've got your details. You receive a message. So I do think that there's so much we can do in this chat environment. And I think it's going to start dominating the e-commerce world, because we're already seeing, here in South Africa, we're seeing fast food chains like KFC, which is a global brand. They just launched the ability to do food orders via a chat channel. So you're sharing your location, you're telling them where you are via chat, they're delivering the menu, you're making your payment, and it's a seamless, quick experience where normally it would have taken 10, 20 steps in downloading a mobile app, adding a card, things like that. And now it's a quick chat session with an AI, and your food gets delivered. So, I mean, that's just one application. But, we worked with a telco here in South Africa where we delivered the world's first card via a channel. So you could apply for a virtual bank card, and we delivered that virtual bank card via the chat channel. And we did the full KYC, the digital onboarding, the liveliness testing, everything via chat. So the person was basically able to open a full bank account via chat, and they didn't have to use any other channel.
Well, I think that's really interesting. I think, and especially if you look at the younger generations, also in Europe, I think will be really keen, I think, to be using these kind of services.
Yeah.
So did you already sort of test the waters with these kind of solutions, or look at partners, for example, in the European context?
We've just actually started expanding. So the Middle East is actually the first area that we've started expanding with. So we've had a lot of interest from our partner MasterCard, who've been working on it with us. So they've opened quite a few opportunities in the Middle East with us. So that will be one of the first areas that we step out of Africa with this proposition. Mm-hmm. And we do now have an office in Europe. So we've actually moved our headquarters to the UK. So we're going to be driving our growth out of the UK market. And, as we all know how big this WhatsApp or chat opportunity is. So, and we're not necessarily focused just on WhatsApp. We could use Viber, we could use Telegram, we could use Facebook Messenger. The whole issue is it's about chat commerce, and it's about enabling services in that channel. And delivering it, in each market, you're going to find a chat service that is dominant, and then it's about delivering the service in that channel.
Yep. And so one thing in any case that also sort of triggers me is that I think one of the, let's say where I think where Europeans are getting used to chat commerce is basically on the fraudulent side. So it's hard to have a day go by without getting a phishing WhatsApp message or SMS or email or. So I think there's a lot going on in the chat channel from that perspective, but not always in a positive way. Are you also really trying to focus on innovation on that side? How do because I think you already talked about identity verification through chat, which I think it could be a really important key to solve challenges like these. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I do think authentication is going to be one of the big keys solutions in the space in terms of mobile authentication, and in terms of making sure that the person that we're dealing with is the person that is on the other end of the device. Because no matter doesn't matter if we're in Nigeria, South Africa, or in Holland, fraud is a reality. So identity theft is a reality, and we're going to with open banking. I think that's even opening up this whole identity theft issue even more. So chat does create a ability to, trying to think of the word now in terms of manage this onboarding a lot better, but there is still a lot of fraud, and I think it's something that isn't going to be solved in the short term. And I do see, there are a lot of these FIDO solutions out there, and out of channel authentication, but I think the verdict's not out in terms of how are we really going to do mobile authentication, and how are we going to the reality is, I think biometric is the only true way to do authentication, and but that is something that then only works in the first world markets, because these very expensive iPhones don't exist in Africa. No, so exactly. Those are the challenges.
It's definitely an interesting one to solve as well. And so, do you also check out how the evolution is going with, let's say, similar services in Asia, where I think, of course, like players like WeChat are also, of course, very dominant in not just commerce but also the financial services side. Do you think is that an example that's being followed, or do you see that Africa is basically taking its own path from that perspective?
Yeah, I think we definitely taking a lead from Asia. I think Alipay, WeChat definitely have been the innovators in the space, and they drove QR adoption. I mean, I think QR was born in that market in terms of QR payments, and we're now starting to see a big resurgence of QR payments in Africa. In terms of using QR for whether it's buy now, pay later, or payment, or P2P, or loyalty, etc. So the whole QR thing is definitely something that we've adopted from Asia. And then if you just look at WeChat in that Chinese context of how that environment is a total commerce ecosystem. And you would have seen in the market, Vodacom just partnered with Alipay. So they're launching a super app in this market. So definitely, I think we take the lead from the East. But one thing that I've learned is the consumer in the East is a lot more tech savvy than any other consumer in the world. Okay. So generally what happens is that the solutions, when they land in the market, generally can be a bit confusing, because there's just so much happening in them. So, so that's the take that I've had from a lot of the solutions coming out of the East, is that there's just too much in them. It's just like,
it might be too complicated. Yeah.
It's just like, is this an Uber app? Is it a e-commerce app? Is this a security? Because it just does everything, and it becomes a bit overwhelming in terms of this whole super app culture. Well, actually, what does this thing do? Because it's going to take me a week to figure out how to use it.
Yeah. No, exactly. What I think is also interesting is that WeChat basically created their own infrastructure by rolling out chat and all these other services together. The same goes, I think, with Alipay as well. Yeah. Well, I think if you actually want to make use of the rails that's already there by, for example, using WhatsApp, you create, of course, a different kind of environment, right? So you actually have no control over the app itself. You just have to work with the chat functionality.
Exactly.
And so that could give you much more reach, but does also indeed bring some more complications, for example, with authentication. Yeah,
it does limit the richness of the experience, but it makes you a lot more focused in terms of making the proposition very focused.
Yeah. And so what I think, when I listened to your story before, I heard that you mostly talked about the challenges that SMEs have, right? So focusing on, financing crop or seeds or insurance on that. How do you see the balance there between sort of individual financial services, private financial services, and SMEs? Do you see that with SMEs, is that where the biggest challenge is, where the biggest growth opportunity is?
That is definitely the biggest growth opportunity. So if you think of everybody in Africa outside of the big cities is a subsistence entrepreneur, if you want to call it that person. So you think of somebody, he is both a business and a consumer. So in the day, he's standing on the side of the road selling goods at a taxi rank, but then on the way home, he's buying food from another merchant. But everybody is this micro business. There are very few large, big organizations. That's why we have, if you look at Africa, you have these very big markets, and bartering is still very big, where I've got apples and you've got clothes, and I'm going to swap my apples for your clothes. And those ecosystems are still very real. But that's why we talk about SMEs, because we want to enable entrepreneurs. We want to, if we just look at unemployment in South Africa, it's one of the highest unemployment rates due to COVID in the world at the moment. So it's how do we get every small person out there to start a business, give them the tools to start building this business. And one of the key things of that is accepting payment, getting payment, building a credit history, being able to access a loan. And you can only do that if you can join some sort of formal financial services ecosystem. And that's where the real big opportunities are. So very different to Europe from that point of view is that there are lots of very small businesses and they're all trying hard to get out of the starting blocks.
But I think it's really interesting, and from that perspective, also I think an example, because I think in Europe we've kind of forgot that actually everyone needs to be an entrepreneur once every while, but we're so institutionalized that we're so much focused on people being an employee rather than an entrepreneur. While I think actually, if you look at what technology does by being able to rent out your house or doing freelance work on the side or do online trading. I think increasingly everyone is becoming, again, an entrepreneur one way or the other, right? And I think that's actually really powerful if we are able to enable that for everyone.
I think that's one of the biggest positives globally of COVID. So yes, there were so many negatives and it destroyed so much, but it has forced so many people to get out of their comfort zone and say, I'm stuck at home or I'm stuck here. I need to make extra money. And I can teach English to somebody in Thailand, or I can teach Dutch to somebody in South Africa. Doesn't matter where I'm sitting. I can be a dance instructor. There's so much that people can do online. And COVID has created this online community of the ability to now transact. For our business, if you just look at us, we've grown 400-500% in a year because of COVID, because digital payments is just escalating. And the sales cycles have shortened totally because the face-to-face sale has disappeared. You now have access to decision makers online. You can have 20 powerful meetings in a day, whereas in the past, specifically doing business in the tech space, you'd have to get into an aeroplane. You'd put a suit on. You'd go and meet with the CEO of the bank. The CEO of the bank would refer you to the CIO. You then meet the CTO. A 6-month sales cycle now is 3 or 4 Teams calls, and the transaction is done. So, there's just huge benefits to what this digital economy has benefited from due to COVID.
Don't you also think that Africa here might actually be ahead, because actually the challenge is bigger there than it is, for example, in Europe, right? Where I think a lot of, there was a lot of government support. So actually a lot of companies and employees, for example, were actually not forced to make any changes because they were just being, they were able to maintain their lifestyle as it was. Exactly. Because I see there, I actually, if I look around, I definitely see some have adopted to this new way of working, indeed, in doing everything remote. But there's tons of people that now, especially now since measures have become a bit more relaxed, that can't wait to just get into the office and get back to their normal life again as they knew it.
Yeah, but that's exactly why I think these, the emerging markets tend to leapfrog from a technology point of view, because the people that live in these markets are forced. We don't have the government support, we don't have the grants, we don't have the savings, even in terms of from a community point of view. People are forced to now create new businesses, create new ways to earn money. And that's how we end up leapfrogging from a technology point of view. And then that creates these opportunities for us to now introduce these propositions into the new markets. Yep.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think it's really interesting from that perspective to really keep a good eye out on Africa, to see what's going on there. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and I truly believe that's really the biggest driver that you can have to move things forward. And so, what are you expecting next, basically, as sort of the developments in the market, right? So I think I think this is let's say, I think you're in a bit of a different situation, I think, than Europeans, which are now experiencing summer and relaxing measures towards because COVID has, vaccinations have gone up and infections are going down. But I think you're just starting winter, and I think you're actually just hitting your third wave with the COVID infections. where do you see that heading? Do you see that in any case there's sufficient urgency and support as well to actually fight the COVID pandemic and make sure that the economic impact is limited?
Yeah, I think Africa is still under a lot of pressure due to COVID, and I think the rest of the world is going to recover years before we do, just because of the access to vaccines, access to the funding for it, the ability to roll out the vaccines, etc. So I think it's going to take a while for us to recover from COVID. But the African population and the countries have always proven very resilient. So I think we'll push through it. We will come out stronger. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we'll continue to innovate in the space, and we'll find solutions to actually to manage the situation that we're in. So like right now, as I mentioned to you, South Africa is in full lockdown. I think it's going to take another 18 months for us to get at least half of our population vaccinated. So I think we're still going to have a fourth wave, most probably another fifth wave. So I think it's just going to force us to focus more and more on enabling digital channels, enabling digital channels in terms of doing business. And I think then, what will become the new normal? I think that's the big question, is will people go back to the offices when this all settles in 2 years' time globally? And I think that's the big question. The one thing I do know is I'm glad I don't own office property. So
for sure, yeah. That's a completely different game now. Yeah.
So I think that's the big game changer. So I think for us, it's about the economies become global. When we're employing people for our business now, we don't care whether they're sitting in Vienna, whether they're sitting in Nairobi, whether they're sitting in Los Angeles, because everybody's become a digital worker. Everybody can work online, and everybody's created this discipline of working online. So for us, that's what's exciting. We can now build a global business very quickly. There are a lot of people globally who are willing to now say, well, you know what, I used to work for Accenture. They want me to go back into the city. I don't want to go back into the city. I'll quite happily work online for this African FinTech startup. And, I think that's our great opportunities. We can access these global minds that are now saying, we don't actually need to work in the city anymore. We can support growth businesses in the emerging markets. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great feature. I think indeed, although I think that although the technical infrastructure is there, I think, let's say, the legal infrastructure is far from ready to facilitate this. So that's quite a hassle still. But what I'm also curious about then, actually, in that same context, is sort of the African talent question, right? So I think that there's a huge population of young people that I think are becoming increasingly tech savvy. How do you see that that's sort of from an educational level? Do you see that there's sufficient support to nurture that talent and to build the economy on for basically into the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think you just look at markets like Kenya as a good example. The amount of tech talent that's being developed in that market, and the support in the universities and the educational environment, is most probably one of the tech hubs across the world right now in terms of the skills that are coming out of there. Look at all the great talent coming out of Nigeria as well. So I think East and West Africa, Egypt, Morocco, they're the proper tech hubs that are now developing. Cape Town is becoming the new Silicon Valley of Africa. We're seeing Amazon building a huge head office here for Africa. So I think there's no shortage of talent. I think the governments can do a lot more to nurture talent and to provide access to education. So that's something that's always been a problem in Africa. If you look at how well, look at the Indian example, how well India transformed by giving access to education and getting their tech ecosystem. You go to a city like Ahmedabad, I think there are 9 universities there. So each city's got just big universities focused on tech. So that's what we need to see in Africa. So we need to see the governments properly provide access to education, provide free access to education, and I think that will grow the skills pool that we have on this continent. And this is the biggest growth continent in the world. So
for sure,
this is where the skills need to come from.
And it would be interesting to actually see, because I think if you look at, let's say, because education can be a costly business, which might pose quite a financial challenge for governments in Africa. While at the same time, we also know that basically all the knowledge that there is out there is basically available free online as well. So I think if we actually make the same transition as a lot of companies do by working online with talent from across the world, let's also hope that sparks also the further nurturing of talent, for example, in Africa, by making that knowledge available and helping people to find their way through it, because I think that's the biggest challenge.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. Well, Clayton, I think we're already running out of time here, but it's been really wonderful to get your take on the developments in Africa and learn about UKheshe businesses. I think it's really wonderful. Is there anything you're particularly looking out for this winter in your case?
I just want to survive, guys. So I mean, COVID's crazy, so I'm gonna stay here locked in my house, and my goal is to survive.
Okay.
While you guys are enjoying the beach, I'm gonna be stuck in my house for a few more months.
Well, good luck with that, Clayton. And I hope in any case that you'll be able to find your way online to everywhere. Thanks a lot for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Great. So everyone who listened in, thank you very much for joining. Please tune in for the next Flash Friday in August. And until then, I wish you a great day, and hope to see you again very soon. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend.